Okay, students, so let's get started with the session. So today we're looking to cover parajumble students. So what are parajumbles? I'm sure you all already know this, that parajumbles is a type of, it's a question type that you get in the verbal part of the competitive exams, wherein you are given a jumbled set of sentences, usually 4 to 5 sentences, and you have to arrange those sentences in the correct sequence or in a logical order to form a meaningful, coherent paragraph. Right? So you have to arrange. So usually you have either 4 or 5 sentences. Sometimes they might go up to 6, but never more than 6, never beyond 6. So 4 to 6 usually. And you have to arrange them in the correct order. That means you have to identify which is the first sentence, which is the second, which is the third, like that, which is the concluding statement. So basically, they're testing you for your understanding of the meaning, comprehension, whether you can use logic and reasoning to arrange the sentences, to identify that what should come first and what should come second, right? So not very difficult. So parajumble questions can vary from like very easy to very difficult, depending, but I choose to believe that you would get something of average difficulty level, okay? So in today's class, I'm going to tell you, now I would begin by telling you a few basic tips or strategies that you could use to solve the question. But I'm going to tell you more while we are practicing the question. So today, I'm going to spend good 1 hour on practicing the question, students, right? And as we practice questions, I will give you some insights on those questions to how you could have solved it, how you could have got the correct answer faster. The good part about your exam is I choose to believe, again, I'm not sure, but I think that you would not get theta type questions. You would get questions which are followed by like MCQ type questions wherein you have to select one of the answer options, one of the given answer options. That means they would give you different arrangements of the sentences, different order, like A, B, C, D, E, B, C, A, D, E, D, A, C, B, E, something like that, right? So you have to select which one is the correct order. So when you get such answer options, it becomes easier for you because you can eliminate few answer options or so a few statements depending on what answer options you have. I'll just show you how, demonstrate it to you in a while. But you are fortunate that you would not get, I don't think that you would get questions where you type in the answer. Like in CAT, they've made it entirely type in the answer theta, right? Theta type. So what happens in theta type question, students, is that you you are not given any answer options. You have to just identify the correct sequence of the sentences and type that order in the given space, right? Now that becomes very difficult because it's a blind game for you. You have absolutely no clue which is going to be the first sentence, which is a probable last sentence. You have absolutely no idea, right? So if you're given the answer options, okay, so you get some cues from there. So I'll just show you how. Now, students, so very quickly through this, parajumble refers to a paragraph wherein the sentence forming it are jumbled, right? You have to arrange the sentences in a proper manner. Different type of parajumble questions. Yeah, so there could be 3 basic type of parajumble questions, students. This is type 1. So what happens in type 1 is, students, that you are given the sentences A, B, C, like, alpha in, usually they're labeled in alphabets, and you have the sentences, jumbled up sentences given to you, and you have to arrange it in the correct order. This is the most basic type. Then type 2, students, is when the first statement is told to you, that what the first statement is. This is fixed. So here the first statement is given to you. India is not deemed to be a respectable nation when it comes to sports. This is the first. Statement which is fixed. So this is the first statement. The other sentences or the other answer options would follow this statement, right? So this is slightly easier for you because you know the introductory sentence and you can build from here. So you can use reasoning to identify what which sentence should follow this, which is the natural extension of this sentence, right? So it is relatively easier because you have the starting point with you. The first statement is fixed. So when they say A, B, C, D, so this is for the second, third, fourth, and fifth sentence. Then students, you have type, in this, a variant of this question is type 2 example is when the starting and the conclusion both are told to you. So this is the first statement and this is the last statement. Identify the order of the sentences in between. So again, that is much easier because you know the starting point also and you know the concluding statement also. So you can do rest of the, identification, right? Then students, you have type 3, wherein you'd be given sentences in a jumbled order, and you can be given a question like which sentence will be the first after the rearrangement. That after you arrange these sentences in the correct order, which will be the first sentence, which will be the second sentence. So they could ask you any one question, which will be the first or which will be the last, which will be the second. Now that depends. If it's the first statement, if you ask the statement, then you only have to find the answer. You just have to identify the introductory sentence and rest would follow. Right? But sometimes they would say, okay, fine, which would be the concluding sentence? Now they ask you about the concluding sentence. So I think you will have to, at least arrange, if not the exact, but some interim order, right? So that you can guess the concluding statement. And sometimes they might ask you, okay, what is the third statement? So if they ask you which is the third statement, you only have to work the solution till the third statement. You are not bothered about the fourth, fifth, and sixth statement. The moment you identify this is the third statement, you identify the first, the second, and the third. Obviously, you will have to identify first, second to reach the third. So you can straight mark the answer and then not be bothered about fourth, fifth, and sixth. So these are three types of parajumble questions that one usually gets in the competitive exam students. Now, there are certain basic strategies for students for solving parajumble questions, right? Number one, if you're given, let me tell you, so I don't have this in place because I've not written it on this PPT, but I'm telling you otherwise, that you can always let the answer options guide you. For example, there are three answer options given to you. One is A, B, C, D, one is B, D, C, A, E, and one is E, B, D, C, A, something like that. Now, students, when you read the answer options, you realize that only A, E, or D can be the opening sentence. Because sentence B and sentence C are not given in the answer options as the opening sentence. So don't be bothered about that. Only check for A, C, and E, A, D, or E. Right? Secondly, students, sometimes you are able to identify, so you don't know the order of all the sentences. But when you read the sentences, you realize that sentence A should necessarily follow sentence B. Right? There's something, for example, there's some link. For example, sentence A says, sentence B says, on one hand, India has got the most number of billionaires in the world. On one hand, India has got the most number of billionaires in the world. And sentence A says, on the other hand, it also has the maximum number of people living below the poverty line. Right? So now there's a contrast. On one hand, you have this. On other hand, you have this. So we know for sure that these two sentences make a mandatory pair. They make a compulsory pair. One sentence A has to follow sentence B. Pehle bolenge on one hand, then you'll say on the other hand. Right? So the two mandatorily form a pair. So now you see, when you look at the answer options, you realize that BA is a pair. BA are together only in one of the answer options. All the other answer options have BA spaced out. You have some intervening alphabets. But only in one of the answer options, you have BA as a given order in between. So you would know, okay, B has to follow A. This is there and only one answer option, so this is the correct answer. You can straight mark the correct answer, right? So you can make use of such techniques to get to the correct answer faster. Okay. Then students, you have to locate the introductory sentence. You have to locate the opening sentence. So that's the starting point of solving a parajumble question, that you have to identify which statement should be the first statement. Now, students, what does an opening sentence look like? Now, imagine yourself narrating a story or narrating an incident or writing an essay. Imagine yourself writing an essay in an exam. How would you begin writing an essay? For example, the essay is about impact of social media on youth. Will you start your essay by saying social media leads to a lot of time wastage, something like that? No, right? You would first begin by introducing what social media is, how youth has been increasingly using social media after the digital revolution, right? And then you will talk about the purpose of the essay, and finally, maybe in the main body, you will begin to list the various impacts, positive and negatives. Right? So how would, now these parajumbles, these sentences, they're drawn from newspaper articles, they're drawn from journals, they're drawn from novels, they're drawn from textbooks. Now imagine yourself an author. How would an author narrate something to somebody? So if the author was to begin telling a story, he or she would first give you the context or the background, right? So the opening sentence, students, is something that either lays the context, it will tell you what the context is, why we are discussing this topic, right? Or it would introduce some important concept. It would begin by introducing some concept that the entire, all the other sentences would further talk about. Right? So what does the introductory statement look like, students? It has to be a general statement. 1 second, students. So it has to be a general statement, students, a broad statement. And the sentences that would follow it would talk about specific sentences. Okay. So introductory sentence would never be a sentence that is extending previous ideas. No, it would be more like something that opens up the topic at hand, right? Then students, you can also check for conclusive last sentences, that which statement is going to be the last sentence. So there are multiple options beginning with introductory sentence. So you will need more than one clue. The last sentence in the paragraph is one that summarizes and has link to previous sentences. Now the difference between introductory and concluding would be that introductory sentence would not have links to anything said before, because that's a starting sentence, right? But concluding sentence would be drawn from the previous sentences, because concluding statement would summarize all the statements. So it should look like a summary statement to you. It would necessarily include the things that were spoken about in the previous sentences, preceding sentences, right? And it would be summary type. It would not open up a discussion, it would conclude. So when you read it, you realize, okay. Then students, you have to anticipate the order of the sentence. So I will tell you how to anticipate the order. So basically, students, you have to identify for logical sequences. Students, this is very important. The mandatory pair that I told you, that if you could identify certain sentences that you know for sure, these two sentences would come together. One would follow the other. It doesn't fit anywhere else in the sentence, in the paragraph. So if you could identify such logical sequences, it makes the search for the correct answer a lot easier, students, because only a few answer options would have that particular set of pairs, right? And yes, so Students, and if nothing strikes you, for example, you try solving the question and nothing strikes you, you're not able to decode it, then as a last option, you can plug in all the options, right? If everything else has failed, this is the last tactic, right? That you plug in all the options. So you read in the order, you read in the order of alphabets or sequence as given in different answer options, right? So say one says A, B, C, D, E. So you read the whole thing, plug in A, B, C, D, E. For example, it says A, D, E, C, B. So then you plug in this sequence. And any sequence that sounds logical to you as a paragraph, not one of the answer, not one or two statements, but the entire paragraph together, then you can go for that as the correct answer, right? So these are a few things that you have to keep in mind. So students, solve this question, everybody. Give me the correct order in the chat box, students. So students, you try doing this without the answer option. Yes, students, give me the answer. Arrange these sentences in the correct order. Let this be A. This is A. Only one student has answered. Students, in the chat box very quickly. So Agam and Akash, you've given me the incorrect answer. Please give it another try. Students, you all have 1 minute. Last 1 minute, everybody will discuss it in 1 minute. Everybody, quickly. No, Parul, that's not the answer. Students, please type your answer in the private mode. Only the host should be able to see your messages. Please, students, the request. Very good. So Anshita is the first student to give me the correct order. The other students, quickly. Sachidanand, incorrect. Please check. Last 30 seconds, everybody. Mahendra has given me the correct answer. Lakshay, no. Okay, last 30 seconds, everybody who have given me the correct answer, please give it an incorrect answer. Please give it a try once again. Okay, so let's discuss this, students. Let's discuss this. Okay, before we solve this question, let me tell you. So let's solve this question, and I forgot to cover one slide. Let me just briefly tell you about that later. First, let me take this up. Just 2 minutes, I'll cover that slide, and then we'll solve more questions. So here, students, you have to understand that the opening sentence. Please listen to me, everybody. Yeah, Shreya has given me the correct answer. Very good. That opening sentence, students, is more like a general statement. Okay. In this case, it is answer option D. The Golden Kela is held each year where awards are given for years worst in Bollywood. So here they are introducing the term the Golden Kela, that what it is, right? They also tell what they are, right? Now, what I notice is, now students, please understand this, all of you, please focus on what I'm saying. Answer option E cannot be your opening sentence. When you're scanning for the first sentence, E cannot be your first sentence, because your paragraph can never begin with it was created by random magazine. What was created? You have to reveal the subject, right? This one says in simpler terms. This cannot be your opening sentence. In simpler terms, what did I say? The introductory sentence should not draw from some previous idea. So in simpler terms would be explaining something which has been said before. So it can't be your opening sentence. Again, it was created, what was created, right? So now we come to B and D, and now it's a tough decision to decide. It's not a tough decision, but here you have to make a decision as to whether D should be the opening sentence or B should be the opening sentence. Now students understand. Answer option B talks about the Golden Kela Awards of a particular year, right? Present. Whereas D talks about the Golden Kela Awards in general. In general, what they are. And B talks about the awards for this particular year. So when you look at all the other answer options, students, what you realize, sorry, students, just a second. Students, just give me a moment. Right? So students, when you see the other answer options, they are giving general information about the awards. It was held this year, it was created like this. So what is the paragraph looks like? What is it talking about? It's giving you general information about what Kela Awards is. So you cannot say that the Golden Kela Awards for this year will be hosted by Cyrus Brocha, and then you tell about Golden Kela Awards. No, you would talk about Golden Kela Awards in general. You would tell what it is and this, and then from a very general perspective to something very narrow and specific, you come down to the Golden Kela Awards for this year. So in general, if you just put it together, all of this, the Kela Awards they held every year, and you know that it was created, and it was created by this, and in simpler terms it means this. And finally, you'd say that the Golden Kela Awards for this year will be hosted by Cyrus Broja. Okay, so this is movement from general to specific, because all the other sentences are not talking about your the Kela Awards for this year. Please understand this. Answer option B would have been the opening sentence if the rest of the sentences spoke about the Kela Awards for this year, but they don't, right? So your opening sentence, students, just give me one moment. I'm getting a very important call. Just give me one moment. ठीक है? Now students, so now how to arrange? So we understand, okay, obviously. So I think in the first reading itself, I would realize that D has to be your opening sentence, and this one looks like the closing sentence to me. But what comes in between? So here, when you're introducing Golden Kela, right, then you would see that one of the sentences says in simpler terms. So now here they're explaining something in simpler terms. What are they explaining? So if you look at all the other sentences, A should follow D because they are explaining what these awards are. So in B, they tell you about that awards are given for this year's worst something, right? And then they come to A saying that in simpler terms, it is the Indian version of Razzies. So first they say it is given to the worst in Bollywood, and then they come down to explaining it in simpler terms. It is the Indian version of the Razzies, right? For example, you introduce somebody, okay, she's my friend, she's the Rihanna of her class, right? So that's something very integral to that person and her personality. What is she? So in one line you tell, okay, what is she all about? She's the Rihanna of her class. So D, A, E. Then E talks about when it was created, right? It talks about the history. Then C, why it was created. Okay, so when it was created would come before why it was created. When, then why. And then finally, of course, B talks specifically about the Golden Kela for this awards. So that has to be an approach. So this, of course, took me time because I'm explaining. But if you have to do it quickly, it would take far less time, students. Achha, one more thing that I want to talk about before we start solving questions. It will just take 2 minutes. That students, when you're trying to identify the parallelism, the correct order of the sentences, especially when you're trying to find the mandatory pair, like in this question, when I realized this in simpler term, अभी ये क्वेश्चन, ये स्टेटमेंट देखिए ऐसा है स्टूडेंट्स, इन सिंपलर टर्म्स, ये स्टेटमेंट ऐसा है which necessarily has to follow something said before. So if you can quickly identify what that would be, you will find one pair. एक pair मिल जाएगा. And when I read, I realize that they're explaining about the Golden Kela Awards. It necessarily has to follow D, because explaining what it is, right? So how do you find mandatory pairs, students? How do you find mandatory pairs? So there are certain relationships that you will be able to establish between, or you'll find between sentences. So one is the cause and effect. That something is a cause and something's an effect. The volcano exploded. The volcano erupted, blocking out the sun. And it blocked out the sun. So volcano erupted is the first sentence, and you have another sentence blocking out the sun. You would know that blocking out the sun has to follow volcano erupted because that is cause and effect. Right? Generic to specific, very important. First, the author would say something general and then would come down to certain specific thing. So this is not true for mandatory, but otherwise, the entire structure of the paragraph could be like that. Especially the example, one example is what we just did, the question that we just solved, that you have generally, he's talking about what Kela awards are, and then he comes specifically to the award for this year. So specific would always be a downstream idea that would come after the general statements. Contrast. For example, I say, on one hand is this, on the is this. On one hand, on the other hand, should come together. We are contrasting, right? Parallelisms. Parallelism, for example, I say, the ocean performs two important functions. It is a habitat for two two functions, or the two things that the ocean does. It acts like a carbon sink, and it supports or is a habitat for the marine life. Right? So I know these two sentences somewhere should come. I mean, one would follow other because they are parallel. Now, what follows which? There would be some cues in the given question, right? Idea explanation. Sometimes the author would begin by stating an idea and then he explains this. For example, he would say global warming. And then he would elaborate what global warming is. The first sentence is okay. So, global warming has caught the imagination of most scholars in the country, most researchers in the country. And they explains the idea of okay, so global warming is when you have something, something. Okay. Then students action sequence. Action sequence is like this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So like if there are multiple events, and you're given statements like, so Radha reached the market, she dressed up, she bought the vegetables, she locked the door, she, bought something. So there are a number of events. Now you can put them in correct chronological order. Radha got dressed up, she locked the door, she left for the market, she bought vegetables, then she finally left the markets. Something like that, right? Correct sequence. Idea transformation is a little tricky one. Here it's like you begin by saying something and then you move to a different tangent, right? For example, you begin by saying that the primary focus of climate change studies is on uh, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. The primary focus of climate change studies is carbon dioxide. However, it is hydrofluorocarbons which are 2,500 times more polluting than carbon dioxide and don't receive much uh, scholarly attention. Right now, I begin to talk about carbon dioxide, and maybe the second sentence is also about carbon dioxide, and then completely move towards hydrofluorocarbons, and then the rest of the passage talks about hydrofluorocarbons and about the Montreal Protocol and all that. Getting my point, students? So that's an idea transformation. You begin talking about something and then move to a different tangent. So that's your ingenuity to sort of identify, okay, so are we transforming the idea? What are we doing? Elaboration? Is it an idea elaboration, idea transformation? What are we exactly doing? Then students, idea reiteration. Now, what is idea reiteration? What does the word reiterate means? If I say I'm reiterating it to you, it means I'm repeating something over and over again to underline its importance. To emphasize on something, I'm repeating something. That's called reiteration. So sometimes the author would say something like, the vaccination drive in India was painfully slow. Indeed, this is confirmed by the research studies, which state that the time taken to vaccinate the population in India is thrice of that taken in other countries. Now, you see, there's a word indeed. So first you made a point that it is painfully slow in India, the vaccination rollout. And then you emphasize this point by saying indeed. Indeed, and then you give some evidence or statistics to support your argument. So that is idea reiteration. Then students, sometimes there could be question answer. Question and answer. What could we do to better handle the pandemic? And then you give the answer right after. The answer to this lies in overhauling our public health system. Right? So what is this? This is a question and answer form, students. So the two form a logical sequence. So these are a few things you have to look at. So now let's go to the questions straight. Just give me a moment. One second, students. please solve this question, students. Question number 1. Please be guided by the answer options. Students, all of you, and give me the answers in the chat box. So here, only Ritvik has given me the correct answer so far. Very good. Agam has also given me the correct answer. All the others, the other students who giving me the incorrect answer, please solve. Please give it another try. Give it another try, students. Avinash, Parul. Parul has given me the correct answer. Students, please answer in the host mode, everybody. Last 30 seconds, students, and then we discuss quickly. Last 30 seconds. Okay, students, so let's solve this question. The correct answer is A, B, C, D, E. Now, students, what do we realize? When we just throw a cursory glance, we're talking about God. If I look at the first words, right, only A, B, and C can be the opening sentence. None of the answer options has B or E as the opening sentence. So let's look at A, B, and C only. Right? Now, between A, B, and C, students, B cannot be your opening sentence because it says millions of people might describe him. You cannot have him in the opening sentence, students. Like I said, your opening sentence cannot draw from any previous idea. So if you have a pronoun him, that can't be your opening sentence. Now down to A and C. Now when you read C, it does not look as the opening sentence. Your opening sentence will not be so elaborate that in the opening sentence itself you would have some something is said and then evidence is given to support it. No. So certainly A looks like an opening sentence to us. God has managed the amazing feat of being worshipped and invisible at the same time. What would logically flow or follow it? Then answer option B. It talks about, it says, what has God done? What is the central idea? That he's both worshipped and invisible at the same time. So then they say that none could claim. People believe him, but none could claim to be an eyewitness. Right? And then they further say that although it is possible to offer, not possible to offer a single fact about him, yet people believe him. Right? Now, students, look, this one is clear that this one is your opening sentence. Okay, and B, of course, looks like a logical extension of that idea because we're talking about how he's invisible and no one has seen him and no one can be the eyewitness, so related ideas. When you see D, this, always try to find some mandatory pair, students. What do I see? D, this reveals, what reveals? What reveals? So they're talking about some gap. They're talking about some contrast. And that gap is given in answer option C, that although people believe him, none can claim to see him, something like that. Okay, so that's the gap which D talks about, which is there in C, and E, of course, has to be the concluding sentence. The concluding sentence could be some in some form of recommendation, some suggestion, some conclusion, something like that. So we need to heal this gap, right? So we do realize that CD, when you're reading the sentence, you would realize, okay, CD has to be a mandatory pair, and CD you just have in A and B. And of course, we know that B can't be your opening sentence, so A is the correct answer. Right? One second, students. 1 minute. Please solve this question, students. Question number 2. None of the students have given me the correct answer so far. Parul is the first one to give me the correct answer. Last 30 seconds, everybody. Students, please set your chat box to private mode. So only the host can read your messages. I will be able to tell you whether your answer is correct or incorrect only when you're sending the messages to me only. Yes, students. Okay, students. So let's discuss this. The correct answer here is answer option B. CEBDA, students. CEBDA. Now I know it is very surprising that how can the sentence begin with an example, right? So I'll tell you how you proceed here. When you look at the opening this thing, it says ECECA. So your opening sentence could either be E or C or A, right? So A can't be your opening sentence because it says this result. So which result? Opening sentence cannot draw from any previous question. Then if you look at C, it says a striking example. And E says, beginning more than 20 years ago, researchers devised experiments to try verify whether prayers had an efficacy. So I'm sure most of you would begin with E, that this looks like, okay, so we are researching. I mean, it talks about some research, and the other answer options also talks about the research. Like this, in all cases, best medical care was given, and the ill patients were divided into two groups, and the result was more astonishing. Okay. ये तो समझ में आ रहा है यहाँ पर कि ई आपका ओपनिंग सेंटेंस हो सकता है. सी को आप इन द फर्स्ट कट यू माइट जस्ट ignore it because usually examples are not the opening sentences, right? I'll tell you why in this case your example is an opening sentence, but now you wouldn't know that, right, when you're approaching a question. So you would proceed with E. So when you proceed with E, you realize that it says that it talks about some researchers, trying to devise some experiments. What do they do next after they've devised the experiment to verify the efficacy of prayer, how effective the prayers are? What is the next thing they do, students? They obviously they divide them into two groups, this and this. Okay. And then in all the cases, which cases are they talking about? They're talking about these cases, people being divided, so all the participants, right? It became evident that the prayer for group seemed to recover better. So here they talk about the experiment being devised. Here they are conducting the experiments, and here it is the result of this experiment, right? So this is the result. So that's the action sequence, students, correct sequence, some action, the sequence. So general idea, devised, the experiment and the result. And then the discussion of that result, that this result was all the more astonishing. So it is very clear that we would have EBDA as a logical sequence. It becomes clear. Action sequence. So where do I fit in C? C cannot come anywhere in between because यहाँ पे तो experiments discover हो रहे हैं. And it can't be a concluding sentence also because you can't say, and that is prayer. A striking example that is a reachable place beyond material reality, and that is prayer. Are we talking about this? That are all the answer, all these statements? What did I tell you, students? Please pay attention to me. What did I tell you? The concluding sentence is more like a summary. But are we talking about that there's a reachable place beyond material reality in the sentences preceding? No. What are we talking about in all the sentences? We're trying to check the efficacy of prayer through an experiment. So this has to be your opening sentence then. Because in none of the answer options, you're introducing prayers. Answer option E that you keep first, that you begin talking about that you throw light, or for that matter you talk on whether prayers are effective or not. But whether prayers are effective or not, that would come next. First you tell about prayer. You introduce prayer into the paragraph. So that is done in answer option C. And the reason why C, even or in spite of being an example, so examples are not usually the first sentence, but in this case, look at the wording. Even though they use the word example, but it has been constructed like a general statement. A striking example that there's a reachable place beyond material reality, and that is prayer. So this example, students, please pay attention. This example is not an example of something said before. If you read all the answer options, kiska example hai ye? This is a general statement which is telling you that something is an example of something in general, and that is prayer. So it would come right here, because और कोई जगह ही नहीं है ना फिर. Where do you fit in C? So that will take you to C as the opening sentence. Okay. A can't follow E. A can't follow E because there is no discuss being spoken about in E. ई में किस रिजल्ट की बात कर रहे हैं? वहां पे तो एक्सपेरिमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं. रिजल्ट तो बाद में आएगा जब एक्सपेरिमेंट कंडक्ट होगा. सो ए वुड कम टू लेटर. Please solve this question, students. Okay, so Akash has given me the correct answer. Avinash has given me the correct answer. Parul has given me the correct answer. Parul, Akash, Avinash. Last 30 seconds, everybody, quickly. Ritvik, correct. Okay, students, so let's discuss this. The correct answer is D, A, B, C, E students, right? So अभी अगर आप ऑप्शंस देखें तो A, E और D है. अभी D is a general statement. In the animal kingdom, some nervous systems are much faster than others and others much slower. Clearly opening sentence की quality है, opening introductory sentence की एक general statement दिया है. In the animal kingdom, some nervous systems are much faster than others and others much slower. A देखिए, A says a snail's nervous system. अब मुझे बताइए एकदम से हम ऐसे स्टार्ट करेंगे, पहली सेंटेंस में ओपनिंग सेंटेंस में एग्जांपल दे देंगे, मुश्किल है. ये फॉर एग्जांपल वाला एग्जांपल है, ये वैसा एग्जांपल नहीं है द वे इट वाज स्टेटेड इन द प्रीवियस क्वेश्चन. एंड E तो कैन नॉट बी योर ओपनिंग सेंटेंस बिकॉज इट सेज इन द सेम वे. सो ये तो ओपनिंग सेंटेंस हो ही नहीं सकता. ठीक है. So that means clearly this answer option D is your opening sentence. We're talking about general statement, nervous system. Then what next? Right? Answer options देखेंगे तो A, E, A, D, C सारे answer options मैंने बता दिए पहले. अभी यहाँ पर एक बात बोली है, they have made a claim. अब उसको support करेंगे उस claim को, मतलब as in उस पे further वो करेंगे. Explain करेंगे किसी, they'll try to make a point. So a snail's nervous system pick up signals from outside. For example, they say this, right? Then अब इसको in other words में explain करा है. अब देखिए यहाँ पर students, every time you have to try to pick up some sentences which can qualify for a mandatory pair. अगर यहाँ पे आप देखें, so for a mandatory pair it would be easy to go with this. In other words, अब ये सोचिए ये in other words किसके लिए यूज करा हुआ होगा? In other words, what should follow B? What in other words? मैं अभी लिखा है snail was looking at an apple और ये, तो इससे पहले snail की बात हो रही होगी, so वो A में हो रही है, right? So D, यहाँ पे they make a point and in B they elaborate on that further, they explain that. So A B तो एक mandatory pair है जो समझ में आ गया है. And very interestingly A B आपका जो है वो सिर्फ A में है और वो सिर्फ D में है and B में भी है, right? अब थोड़ा confusion, तो ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता है. We down to these two then, D A B C E, D E A B C. अब ये E पहले आएगा D के, A B के पहले आएगा या A B के बाद में आएगा? Clearly answer option E immediately D के बाद नहीं आ सकता है. E cannot come right after D because it says in the same way. अभी मुझे बताइए ये दोनों कहाँ से एक mandatory, many of you gave me C as the correct answer. ये कहाँ से mandatory pair बनते हैं? In the animal kingdom some nervous systems are much faster than others. In the same way quantum flashes are millions of times too rapid for us to register. So brain play a trick on us by seeing solid objects. यहाँ पे in the same way means this is idea reiteration. In the same way का मतलब क्या है? Idea reiteration. मुझे बताइए ये idea reiteration है क्या आंसर ऑप्शन E is reiterating what is explained in D? बिल्कुल भी नहीं. They're talking about two distinct things. So we clearly know आंसर ऑप्शन में A भी हमारा mandatory pair बना है, D हमारा opening sentence है. So A is the correct answer. अब आप plug in करके check कर लीजिए. D A B C is extension of B, उसी चीज को further explain, एक point उसका C में breakup करके लिख दिया है. And E is the final sentence which, अब इसमें क्या है? पहले they said something like this, उसको explain करा, right? और इस वाले example को further reiterate करा आंसर ऑप्शन E से. अगर आप देखें वो बता रहे हैं कि कैसे स्नेल को समथिंग अपीयर्स डिफरेंट फ्रॉम व्हाट इट सीज, उसी पॉइंट को इलैबोरेट कर रहा है ई, उसी पॉइंट को इन अदर वर्ड्स इट्स एक्सप्लेनिंग. सो ई हैज टू कम आफ्टर ए. अगर आंसर ऑप्शन से क्विकली चलेंगे, सो वी फाइंड दैट डी इज द ओपनिंग सेंटेंस डाउन टू दीज थ्री. ए बी मैंडेटरी पेयर देख लिया तो डाउन टू दीज टू, एंड देन वी नो दैट ई हैज टू कम आफ्टर ए बी एंड नॉट बिफोर ए बी. सो क्लियरली ए इज द आंसर. Question number 4, everybody.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, which question do we need to do? Sorry to interrupt.
Question number 4.
Okay, ma'am.
Third, no, just now.
Ma'am, my signal had some
No
issue.
worries, no worries. Do question. Last 30 seconds, everybody. So here, Avinash has given me the correct answer. Only Avinash has given me the correct answer so far. No, 1 second, 1 second. I think there's a mistake. 1 second, let me check. Just give me a moment, students. Yeah, only Avinash has given me the correct answer. Mahendra has given me the correct answer. Last 30 seconds, everybody. Last 30 seconds. Ritvik has given me the correct answer. Ankur has given me the correct answer. Yeah, students, please type the answers in the chat box. Okay, students, type the answer in the host mode, students. Please, that's a request. It will just take 1 second of yours. Please change the setting to the host mode. Okay, students, so the correct answer is B, D, A, E, B, C. Right? So students here, the opening sentence could be B, D, A, E. So many opening sentences. This can't be your opening sentence. This can't be your opening sentence. So here we're talking about if you see some child, some development, some talent. So here D comes across as the best this thing for this like the introductory sentence, because we're talking about child development actually, and we're talking about nature or nurture, right? Is talent inborn or it could be inculcated and taught? So D is like the opening sentence, And then to emphasize this point, it says a person is neither the product of just her environment, not just a genetic makeup. अब देखिए यहाँ पे nature और nurture की बात हो रही है, right? Nature, biology, and nurture is upbringing. So obviously this is the downstream idea to this. पहले इसकी बात करेंगे कि ऐसा एक split है nature और nurture का. फिर उस point को अब the transactional model of child development helps to resolve the split. जो split है nature और nurture को उसको ही resolve करता है. और कैसे resolve करता है? What does it say? It says a person is neither the product of this or this. Okay, and then it says that rather it is the complex interaction between the two. So पहले ये transaction model है, right? जो help करता है resolve करने के लिए. ये जो आपका एक binary है कि nature और nurture उसको help करता है resolve करने में. So what is transactional model? What does it say? It says that answer option A, sorry, statement A, a person is neither the product of his environment or ये binary नहीं है कि ये या ये. The person is a product of both, and then he says rather it is a complex interaction between the two. So obviously you would have D, A, E. Then they would give an example. Let me give you an example for this, and C is clearly an example statement. They're explaining that using that statement that a child is born with talent for music, which then gets nurtured through continuous learning. ये किसका example है? Child development model का example है. That it is both the factors, not one either or both the factors. Clearly the answer, this students, you should have got that correct. This one was simple one. Please solve question number 5, students. Question number 5, students. Parul and Akash have given me the correct answer. Ritvik has the correct answer. Ritvik, Akash, Parul correct. Avinash correct. Rohit correct. Last 30 seconds, everybody. Okay, students. So the correct answer here is answer option A, B, A, C, E, D. Right. अभी opening sentence देखिए B, D, A, D, A. तो B, A और D. Right. B, A. At first you think it is as just a matter of going bigger. इस sentence का certainly reference है किसी something said before. It certainly has a reference. At first think of it. What does this it refer to? This is not your opening sentence. If you look at D, in some ways the development of each child retraces the whole story physical. So this might be the opening sentence, right? But if you see, we're talking about, it's more about, child growing and developing. Okay. So we can begin with, I think I would begin with this. If this does not work, then I can come back and put D first. But let me begin with B, because B looks like a more probable opening sentence. There's nothing in the world more fascinating than watching a child grow. अब देखिए इसका मैंडेटरी पेयर ढूंढिए, बिकॉज एट फर्स्ट है, ये क्लियरली मैंडेटरी पेयर बन सकता है. तो आप देखेंगे कि एट फर्स्ट एंड देन कुछ मैंडेटरी सीक्वेंस बन रहा है, लॉजिकल सीक्वेंस. फर्स्ट यू से लाइक एट फर्स्ट समथिंग देन समथिंग, राइट. सो एट फर्स्ट यू थिंक ऑफ इट इज जस्ट एज अ मैटर ऑफ ग्रोइंग बिगर. अभी आप बी से स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं और ए और सी आपको मैंडेटरी पेयर लग रहा है. देन एज द इन्फेंट बिगिंस टू डू थिंग्स, you may think of it as a learning tricks, right? So A and C clearly आपका mandatory pair है. अच्छा, E के लिए भी आप ढूंढ सकते हैं कोई पेयर, because it begins with a but. ये किस में contrast कर रहे हैं, but it's really more complicated and full of meaning than that, right? तो it would clearly follow AC. Why? देखिए, what do they say? First they talk about child growing and developing, then say at first you think, right? Then you might think this. अब E इस पे contrast करता है. You might think this, but it is more complicated than what you think, isn't it? So clearly E would come here. अब D कहाँ आएगा? In some ways, the development of each child, the whole history of physical and step by step. So abhi it says, in some ways, the development of each child retraces the whole history of human race, physically and spiritually, step by step. Right? अभी ये एक थोड़ा unrelated सा idea लग रहा है. ये idea opening sentence नहीं हो सकता, because rest of the sentence are not talking about how it retraces. अब देखिए, concluding sentence, students, a very important point. Concluding sentence के दो features होते हैं. एक तो कंक्लूडिंग सेंटेंस समरी स्टेटमेंट होता है, राइट, जिसमें वो समराइज करते हैं जो उससे पहले कहा गया है. बट समटाइम्स योर कंक्लूडिंग सेंटेंस कैन ऑल्सो बी समथिंग अनरिलेटेड. सो उसका स्ट्रक्चर ऐसा होता है, फोर थिंग्स टॉक अबाउट समथिंग, लास्ट सेंटेंस में कोई एक नई बात इंट्रोड्यूस कर दी है, और ये जो नई बात है ये फर्दर पैसेज में सपोजिटली, बिकॉज this paragraph is drawn from a larger passage, right? ये पैराग्राफ कहीं से तो ड्रॉ करा है ना, इसी पैसेज से. उस पैसेज में ये जो लास्ट स्टेटमेंट में जो आइडिया है वो फर्दर इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे. तो जब भी आप किसी अनरिलेटेड आइडिया को देखो क्वेश्चन में कि चार चीजें तो एक बारे में बोल रही हैं और फिफ्थ सेंटेंस थोड़ी सी अलग बात बोल रहा है, वो यूजुअली लास्ट सेंटेंस होता है, क्योंकि दैट कांट बी योर फर्स्ट, बिकॉज फर्स्ट सेंटेंस में तो वो ही होगा जो आगे व्हाट दे वुड स्पीक अबाउट. दे वुड दैट आइडिया, that whatever that is, that would be spoken about in all the other sentences. It lays the context. But concluding sentence would either be summary, जो बोला है उसको summarize कर दिया, या फिर it would be something unrelated, कि author ने पहले कुछ बातें कही, right, and then now towards the end it introduced something else, जो आपके larger context में देखा जाए तो वो उस passage में बाद में explain करे. So यहाँ पे वो something else जो है वो यहाँ पर हमारा D आ गया. So it is BACET. Okay? Because unrelated चीज आप ना तो opening में दे सकते हैं, ना ही आप बीच में कहीं दे सकते हैं. So it has to be the concluding sentence, because that idea would be further spoken about. Question number 6, students. Students here, nobody has given me the correct answer so far. Ankur is the first student to give me the correct answer. Vinash has given me the correct answer. Last 30 seconds, everybody. Parul has now given the correct answer. Akash has given me the correct answer. Ritvik has now given me the correct answer. Okay, students. So let's solve this. The correct answer here is D. D-E-C-A-B students. D-E-C-A-B. अभी ओपनिंग सेंटेंस देखें तो सी ए और डी में है सी ए और डी C can't be your opening sentence. It says, however, it is subject. What does this it refer to? Right. Ab B or A. A on one hand, we can this, B on one hand, this, right? It is hard to believe that, I mean, it is not very probable that your passage would begin with on one hand and on the other hand. Right? So यहाँ पे ऐसा लगता है कि D से start होना चाहिए. This is like a general statement. The word philosophy is of Greek origin and means literally. यहाँ पे कुछ किसी word का origin बताया है, उसका meaning बताया है. अभी देखिए इसका आप you can अच्छा ये दोनों तो for sure mandatory pair बन गए आपके. Okay. अब problem ये है कि सभी में है ये A B. In all the sentence you have A B. नहीं. ये आपका नहीं हो सकता है आंसर और ये आपका आंसर नहीं हो सकता है क्योंकि स्टार्टिंग में ए भी नहीं आएगा. सो ए सी या डी अगर ये तीन ऑप्शन रह गए. ठीक है. अब अगर डी है सो अगर डी लेकर चलते हैं मान के चलते हैं डी. अभी डी में इट वुड आइदर फॉलो सी और ई राइट. अभी आप इसका मैंडेटरी पेयर ढूंढिए. दिस सिंपल लिंग्विस्टिक फैक्ट. ये दिस सिंपल लिंग्विस्टिक फैक्ट किसके लिए कहा गया है? व्हाट ढूंढिए लिंग्विस्टिक फैक्ट. दैट लिंग्विस्टिक फैक्ट इज डी. दैट लिंग्विस्टिक फैक्ट इज सेड इन डी दैट जो वर्ड फिलोसफी है वो ग्रीक ओरिजिन का है एंड व्हाट इट मीन्स. दिस इज अ फैक्ट. And what does it show? It shows that philosophy is an intrinsic expression of human nature. This fact tells you this. However, it is subject to two kind of distortion. ये जो fact है ये दो type के distortion से suffer करता है. Those distortion are here A and B. Binary बताइए ना. Two kind of distortion. What are those distortions? On one hand this, on other hand this. ये टू जो चीज है this word two, it has to be this, right? So for sure आपका the sentence begins with D, it has to be followed by E. C further explains that idea and finally you have the two distortions A and B. D, E, C, A, B. Okay students. So students, this was about parajumbles. There's one more thing I want to talk about. Just say in a sentence you have a full name. For example, you have Albert Einstein in a sentence, and then other sentences refer to him as Einstein, 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 right? So please understand this, that the full name will come before the surnames. So the sentence with the full name Albert Einstein will always come before the answer options with just the surname, right? So for ease of writing, they would first say Albert Einstein. All the other sentence they would just say Einstein, 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 like that. Then students, sometimes there would be some chronological order given to you. So you can work by dates also. Usually the dates are in correct sequence. So if you have multiple dates in answer options, so usually you would find the correct, you would find that the sentence with the earlier date will be mentioned first, and the sentence with the later date will be mentioned later. Right? So it's going to be something like that. So yeah, so students, you have to practice a lot of parajumbles. You can just type cat parajumbles. I'm sure they're going to keep the difficulty level very close to cat, because that is the most popular exam in the country, and the fact that you'd be graduate soon. So you'll become eligible to write cat also, no? Like this year or the next year, you are eligible to write cat. So, and cat is for admission into postgraduate courses. So I think they would mimic the question paper set for you would mimic the difficulty level of cat. So you can just practice cat parajumble questions, practice as much as you can, and spend time on the question, students. Okay, so I am sure they're going to test you for parajumbles. Now in tomorrow's class, students, there are a few miscellaneous things that remain to be covered. So I will just give you a brief on all those things together so you can practice that, right? So yeah, that's about it. Okay, students, any questions, queries, doubt you have, students, anybody? Okay, so yeah.
Ma'am, in the sixth question, I had one doubt that, ma'am, you said that the last last part of the sentence is usually the conclusion part.
Mostly, ना, right? Mostly. So अब यहाँ पर नहीं है. Look, these questions are not set for you. These questions are not set for the purpose of your exam, that they would on purpose keep the concluding sentence as something that summarizes so that it is easier for you to spot it. No, they are randomly drawn from certain passages. So ideally, mostly the concluding sentence could be a summary statement. But if you don't find a summary statement, then what do? So in this case, you don't have a summary statement. So now please be very clear about this. The last sentence would be a summary statement when there is a summary statement in the given answer, in the given statements to you. अब इन 5 में से अगर कोई summary statement होता तो वो आपका concluding statement होता. But अगर summary statement है ही नहीं, if you don't have one at your disposal, what do you do then? You go by the second best. What you go by what forms a logical sequence. And of course, so अगर concluding statement है आपके statements में, that would qualify to be the concluding statement, last conclusion. But अगर नहीं है, फिर देखिए where it can fit. Okay. Okay, students. So that's all for today. Bye-bye, students. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow.